What about the stop lines? The secretary held out his notebook, where there was a blank column between the other two, headed in black ink, neatly underlined. Think we haven't been on it, Bach? Arthur Mountain patted his scribe and winked at Kennedy, who was brooding about the word traitor. Aren't we always on it, even when we seem far off? Nothing disappears, though all is rearranged. Lost are they who were unamazed. With a little bang of the heart, Kennedy heard the lines from the tower. Well, here's something for your notebook, Jonathan, sir. Bit of ladybird history. Ready? Fire one. Now Kennedy'd have to hear this out. Would he ever get home? It was nearly 8. Barbara had been noticing his absence. He'd have called her, but the production of the phone had been noticed by Arthur Mountain, who'd probably have something to say about such equipment. Now in 1276 we were invaded by the English. King Edward I couldn't stick the fact we were a sovereign principality under Llywelyn, which jolly boy has been practising spelling, I fancy. Arthur being his secretary, because he's going to have his bollocks clipped for stew by an albino alewife if he gets it wrong. I bet Dr. Kennedy can spell it. We don't want to look like fools. So they came in as they'd been prone to do here, there and everywhere. This was ancient colonialism, and this is an ancient Welsh grouse. Any boy from the valleys will tell you, but he won't tell it like me. Now, Llywelyn was a figurehead, a charismatic fellow, and he was unifying Wales after his own fashion. It wasn't easy. What you've got to understand is in Wales, the smaller lords would fight their princes at the slightest opportunity. Accordingly, you might well have to employ both terror and largesse to bring them into line and create allies. This Llywelyn did. Terror and largesse. Can you picture it? 730 years ago. Can you picture a prince of terror and largesse? As you had a brown paper bag in his head, Santa written on one side in black marker pen, and on the other Satan. Arthur Mountain looked closely at Jolly Boy to see if this was what he was imagining. Or is he like Peter Mandelson coming to your door with a hammer? He looked at Kennedy, who shook his head. What do you see? Anything? What quantity of wet blood and fire? And how much laughter, by the way? These pictures of the past, you can never hear the laughter in them, can you? Have you noticed that, Dr. K? I have thought about it, Kennedy said. Did they laugh when they brought gifts, Prince Llywelyn's boys, or only when they torched a Hamlet? Was he good at impressions? A natural wit? By the way, put this separate, J-boy, what was the funniest year in history? Which year did people laugh most per capita? Important, isn't it? Arthur Mountain put his hand to his ear against the background roar and chime of the inventor's arms. And not a man jack to research it. Maybe it's better that way. He said to Kennedy in a manner that Kennedy understood was now understood as checking rather than hostile. Don't want the academics in on a laughter, do we? A wonderful thought. The funniest year, heaven on earth. Very interesting is how global Llywelyn was in his strategy over 700 years ago. Arthur Mountain continued. Kennedy wondered if he wore his hair after the fashion of medieval Wales, corked with some sort of resin to see him through the winter, which he wouldn't wash out until Easter. When would a Prince of Terror and largesse have time to wash his hair? Or even go home? Conducting operations against enemies from foreign bases, Llywelyn was, in France and Palestine as well. Terror on a continental scale. And who says the English didn't deserve it? Edward held his court in Bordeaux, didn't he? What the fuck was an English king doing down there? Westminster should have been enough. But no, he has to have Bordeaux as well. His brother's already been given Sicily as a present. Most of us get socked to some fucking DVD we don't want. He gets Sicily. This is how English royalty gorges itself on foreign lands, with no authority except that obtained from its own use of force or threat to use it. Well, Llywelyn, he made it his business to pick the English off by remote control in these self-same foreign fields. This was his rebellion by terror and influence from afar against English power. Soon the poets were calling him King of the Welsh. Arthur Mountain swigged from his wine pipe till it was empty, and Kennedy went along to the bar to negotiate another drink for him. While he waited on the process of aliquots and aliquants, for the barmaid could not serve wine by the pint measure, Kennedy wondered if Johnny Boy might not be, by analogy, a sort of poet in the setup into which Kennedy himself was apparently being introduced. It was the wine. Now, Edward, he does not care for this appellation, King of the Welsh. Only one king in circulation is himself. So he gives Llywelyn a chance to come up to London and show him some respect, homage, obeisance, so forth. Would Llywelyn go up and bend the knee? Not he, Arthur Mountain cried. In his large right hand, the glass lodged snow. Edward Longshanks could come down to Carmarthen and kiss the hall in the shadow of the valley of his arse, for Llywelyn was concerned. The valley royal, fringed with firs, lofty pines, crooked beaches and stately plains, where the cattle graze and the lonely goat chews and ponders his lot. Now you start to see what kind of man Llywelyn was. Have you met his kind? People took strongly to him one way or the other. His brother David, he fucking ratted him. Was it his charisma he resented? What was it he envied? Envied so much he'd turn his back on his own king for an English king. Is that king like you, mean it? Kennedy inquired, remembering what he'd overheard the night before in the talk of Bright. Arthur Mountain watched him and said, I choose my king, Dr. Kennedy. In revenge, Llywelyn declared war against the English. That way around it was. What sense of danger do you think this man had? What did danger mean to him? You hear me? Has this question yet been answered? What does danger mean to you? What's it there for? Why does the world allow it? Do you know anything of that? Kennedy looked down from the Welshman's eyes. He should be on his way home. Now, you saw the American fleet sailing for Iraq in the springtime 3 years ago. With large hands, Arthur Mountain made a gesture of magnitude. Such a force did Edward send against the Welsh. Attack by sea, attack by land, up in the mountains. Counterinsurgency this was, 730 years ago. Cleared the Welsh forests, Edward did, built forts, built castles. He recruited Welsh auxiliaries against their own. And this is what the imperial powers are still doing, of course. But every so often, Arthur Mountain dropped his voice and looked about, came back to Kennedy with eyes dead green. Every so often, Edward's men ran into the most terrible resistance, left their skin on the box. And this is where Holy Youth, stalking the previous messenger, came to the table smoking a spliff and handed Arthur a little roll of paper, who opened it, touching the rose, and said, back in a minute. Is he going to say about the stop lines? Kennedy asked Johnny Boy. When, replied Johnny Boy. Do you have a particular slot in mind? Thank you.